Welcome to our channel, where we bring you another the most spine-chilling tales and unsettling stories. Today, we have a real story, Whispers of Maplecrest. Sit back, but not too comfortably, as we dive into this unnerving narrative. Tranquility Falls, a small, picturesque town nestled in the heart of the countryside, was known for its tranquil beauty and warm community spirit. The townspeople were always eager to welcome newcomers with open arms, offering them a slice of their idyllic life. It was the perfect place for a fresh start, a place where one could escape the hustle and bustle of city life and find solace in the simple joys of rural living. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect town, something dark and foreboding lurked. The new residents of Maplecrest Drive, a quiet cul-de-sac with stately oaks and well-manicured lawns, couldn't quite shake the feeling that they were being watched. It was as if the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for them to reveal their true intentions. As the days turned into weeks, the newcomers began to settle into their cozy homes. They made friends with their neighbors, attended church socials, and joined the local book club. But, despite their best efforts to integrate, they couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Something just didn't add up. It was Halloween night, the spookiest night of the year, when their suspicions were finally confirmed. An invitation arrived, addressed to each of them, inviting them to a grand party at the eerie Victorian mansion at the edge of town. The host, a mysterious figure named Abraham Van Helsing, was known throughout the town as a recluse who rarely, if ever, left his estate. The party, they were told, would be like no other they had ever attended. Curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to accept the invitation, hoping that it would provide them with some answers about the strange occurrences they had been experiencing. As they dressed in their finest costumes and made their way down Maplecrest Drive, they couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. The air was thick with anticipation, and the howling of the wind seemed to echo their own fears. The mansion, when they finally arrived, was even more imposing than they had imagined. Its Gothic architecture and cobweb-covered facade loomed ominously before them, as if daring them to venture inside. A butler, impeccably dressed in a black tailcoat, greeted them at the door and led them through a grand hallway adorned with antique furniture and eerie paintings. They followed the butler up a winding staircase, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors, until they reached a grand ballroom where the party was in full swing. The room was filled with people, all dressed in elaborate costumes, dancing to the eerie strains of a live orchestra. A lavish feast was spread across a long table at the far end of the room, and champagne flowed freely from an ornate gold fountain. Despite the opulence, there was an undercurrent of tension that hung in the air. The guests whispered amongst themselves, their voices barely audible over the din. As the night wore on, the newcomers began to mingle, hoping to uncover the truth about their host and the strange town they had found themselves in. They exchanged glances with one another, silently acknowledging their shared suspicions. They danced, they ate, they drank, all the while keeping an eye out for any sign of Abraham Van Helsing. Finally, as the clock struck midnight, the party came to an abrupt halt. A hush fell over the crowd, and all eyes turned towards the entrance of the ballroom. There, standing before them, was Abraham Van Helsing himself. He was tall and imposing, with a commanding presence that seemed to fill the room. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue, locked onto each of them in turn, as if sizing them up. With a grace that belied his advanced age, he began to speak. He welcomed them to his home, thanked them for attending his party, and then launched into a tale of intrigue and betrayal that shook the very foundations of Tranquility Falls. He revealed that the town they had come to love was not what it seemed, that it was, in fact, a sanctuary for a secret society of vampires who had ruled over it for centuries. He explained that they, the newcomers, were the key to breaking that cycle. As Van Helsing spoke, the guests around them began to react, some visibly horrified, others filled with rage. The tension in the room reached a boiling point, and before anyone could react, a battle erupted. Fists flew, teeth were bared, and accusations were hurled. Amidst the chaos, the newcomers found themselves caught in the middle, unsure of whom to trust. In the end, the vampires were defeated, and Tranquility Falls was freed from their grasp. As they left the mansion, the newcomers looked out over the town, now bathed in the light of dawn. They knew that they had played a part in changing its fate, and that they could never go back to the way things were before. They would always be connected to this town, for better or for worse. And so, the new residents of Maplecrest Drive began their new lives in Tranquility Falls, determined to help rebuild the town and forge a new future for themselves and their neighbors. The shadows cast by the past no longer loomed as large, and they took comfort in the knowledge that, together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The grand mansion looms ominously on the horizon, its dark wood exterior bathed in the eerie glow of flickering jack-o'-lanterns. The full moon hangs low in the sky, casting an unsettling light upon the surrounding landscape. As the guests arrive at the party, they exchange nervous glances, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and dread. The butler, a stern-faced individual with a penchant for black attire, greets them at the door. "Welcome, welcome," he says, his voice echoing through the cavernous entryway. "Please, do come in." The guests hesitantly step inside, their footfalls muffled by the plush red carpet. The air is thick with the scent of apple cider and spiced cinnamon, but beneath it lies an undercurrent of something more sinister. They wander through the mansion's labyrinthine halls, taking in the opulent decor. The walls are adorned with eerie paintings and taxidermied animals, their glassy eyes seeming to follow the guests as they move about the room. Strings of twinkling lights crisscross overhead, casting dancing shadows on the polished wooden floors. The music, a haunting waltz, drifts through the air, its melody both beautiful and unsettling. The hosts, a mysterious couple known only as the mistress and master of the house, mingle among their guests. The mistress is a strikingly beautiful woman with raven hair and piercing emerald eyes. She wears a tight-fitting black dress that hugs her curvy figure, revealing just enough cleavage to be provocative. Her makeup is expertly applied, emphasizing her striking features. Her husband, the master, is a tall, imposing figure with an icy gaze and slick-back silver hair. He dresses in a tailored black suit, his silver cufflinks gleaming in the flickering light. They seem to be everywhere at once, their presence unsettlingly omnipresent. As the party reaches its peak, the guests begin to notice strange occurrences. A servant disappears into a hidden doorway only to re-emerge moments later, looking dazed and disoriented. A couple argues loudly before vanishing into a dark corner, their voices muffled by the music. The food seems to be disappearing from the tables just as quickly as it's being served. The guests exchange uneasy glances, wondering if they're imagining things. Suddenly, the master clears his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his voice booming through the room, "we have a special surprise for you all." He gestures grandly to a curtained-off area near the back of the ballroom. "Will the brave souls who answered our invitation please join us?" There is a collective gasp as the curtains part, revealing a darkened chamber beyond. In the center of the room, a massive, ornate altar stands tall, adorned with candles and occult symbols. The master steps forward, his voice taking on a menacing tone. "Welcome to the heart of our home, the place where we keep our deepest, darkest secrets. We've invited you all here tonight not because we are particularly fond of you, but because we wish to share our burdens with you. You see, for generations, our family has been cursed. Tonight, we invite you to join us in bearing that curse. All you must do is step forward and take what is offered." The guests exchange uneasy glances, unsure of what to make of the master's words. Slowly, hesitantly, they begin to inch forward, drawn inexorably toward the altar and the mysterious offerings it holds. As they approach, they can see that the altar is covered in various objects, jewelry, statuettes, and even human remains. The master smiles darkly, his cold eyes boring into theirs. "Take what you will," he says, his voice a low growl. "But remember, once you've accepted our gift, there is no turning back." The guests exchange furtive glances, their hands trembling as they reach out and touch the objects on the altar. Some appear entranced, drawn irresistibly to certain items, while others seem to struggle with indecision. As they make their choices, the master and mistress watch them carefully, their expressions unreadable. The tension in the room is palpable as the guests make their selections and retreat back into the party. The master clears his throat once more, signaling that the ceremony is complete. "Well, then," he says, his voice taking on a more conversational tone, "I trust you all found something of interest." He gestures toward the refreshment table, where a selection of delectable treats awaits. "Please, help yourselves." The guests exchange uneasy smiles, their faces betraying their fear and confusion. They continue to mingle and nibble on hors d'oeuvres, but the air of unease remains thick in the room. They know now that they have been initiated into something dark and twisted, and they can only hope that they made the right choice at the altar. As the night wears on, they can't help but wonder what further revelations the mistress and master have in store for them. The party reaches its climax when the lights are suddenly cut, plunging the mansion into darkness. Screams fill the air as the guests are herded down into the basement by their now cannibalistic neighbors. They are subjected to unspeakable torture, their screams muffled by the thick, cloying darkness. As they fight for their lives, they begin to form a desperate plan to escape. One by one, they manage to free themselves from their captors and stumble upstairs, only to find the mansion empty. Panicked, they race to the police station to report what they've seen. The sudden blackness envelops the mansion like a shroud, pressing against the guests' eyes and making them feel as though they are drowning in darkness. They clutch at each other in blind terror, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The cannibalistic revelers seem to thrive in the darkness, their animalistic laughter and growls echoing through the halls. As the guests are herded down the stairs, they trip and stumble over each other, their cries of pain and fear mingling with the chaos. They are thrown into a dank and musty basement, lit only by the flickering flames of torches set in sconces along the walls. Chains hang from the ceiling, and rusty iron implements are scattered about the floor. Their captors close the heavy wooden doors, sealing them in. A man dressed in a tailcoat and top hat steps forward, his face twisted into a grin. "Welcome, my dear guests," he says in a silky voice, "to the heart of Tranquility Falls. You are all here because you were too nosy, too curious about what goes on behind closed doors. Well, now you shall see." He gestures to one of his followers, who brandish a whip. The whip cracks through the air, and the torture begins. The guests are taken one by one, bound and stretched on racks, their flesh flayed by the whip. Their screams fill the basement, bouncing off the stone walls and making the air vibrate. The others can only watch, helpless, as their friends and neighbors are brutalized before them. Some try to resist, struggling against their bonds, but to no avail. As hours pass, the guests begin to form a desperate plan. They whisper among themselves, passing notes and sharing ideas. Finally, they agree. They will take turns, using their combined strength, to overpower their captors and escape. The first volunteer, a burly man named Jackson, nods determinedly. He waits until his captors are distracted, then lash out, grabbing the whip from the torturer's hand. There is a brief struggle, and Jackson is subdued, but the other captors are thrown into disarray. The guests seize the opportunity, scrambling to their feet and attacking their captors. They fight with tooth and nail, using whatever they can find as weapons. The cannibals are overpowered, their leader slain by a group of women who had been forced to watch as their loved ones were tortured. The guests free themselves from their bonds and run up the stairs, back into the main part of the mansion. The mansion is eerily quiet. The guests exchange confused glances, unsure of what to make of the silence. They check the doors, finding them all locked from the outside. Panic begins to set in as they realize that their captors must have escaped through secret passages or hidden doors. They race to the police station, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they arrive at the station, they are greeted by the shocked faces of the officers. The story they tell is so unbelievable that the police don't know whether to believe them or not. But the evidence is clear. Blood stains the floor of the basement, and chains hang from the walls. The officers radio for backup, and the town of Tranquility Falls begins to stir. The truth about what has been happening beneath their feet is about to come to light. But even as the police question the survivors, the remaining cannibals are still out there, hiding in the shadows. They are biding their time, plotting their revenge. And the citizens of Tranquility Falls, innocent no more, must now face the terrifying truth about their seemingly perfect town. The police station in Tranquility Falls was abuzz with activity as officers scrambled to respond to the call from the escaped guests. The air was thick with a mix of fear and confusion as they hurriedly assembled a task force to investigate the disturbing reports coming from the mansion on Maplecrest Drive. As the lead officer, Detective Williams, addressed the team, he couldn't shake the feeling that something about this case was different. It wasn't just the horrific nature of the crimes they were investigating. It was the way the survivors spoke about their captors. There was an almost detached quality to their voices, as if they were describing events that had happened to someone else. "All right, listen up," Detective Williams began. "We've got a long night ahead of us. We need to find out exactly what happened in that mansion, and we need to do it fast. Our first priority is to locate the missing guests and bring them to safety." The team nodded in agreement, their expressions grim. They knew the stakes were high, and they were determined to bring the perpetrators to justice. As they left the station, they climbed into their squad cars and drove toward the mansion, their sirens wailing through the quiet night. Upon arriving at the mansion, they were greeted by a hive of activity. SWAT teams, forensic specialists, and medical personnel were already swarming the grounds, searching for any sign of the missing guests. Detective Williams radioed into the command center to update them on the situation. "This doesn't look good, boss," one of his officers said, frowning as they surveyed the scene. "The place is crawling with cops, but there's no sign of the cannibals. It's like they vanished into thin air." Detective Williams nodded, a worried frown creasing his brow. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number of the first guest to call in with their story. After a brief conversation, he thanked the man and hung up. "All right, listen up everyone," he said, addressing his team. "One of the survivors just called me. He says he found something in the basement before he escaped. Says it's important. We need to get a team down there to check it out." The team exchanged nervous glances, but they didn't hesitate. They knew that every minute counted, and they hurried down to the basement to investigate. The air was thick with the stench of blood and death, and the walls were smeared with grisly markings that chilled them to the bone. They made their way through the maze of corridors, following the survivors' directions until they reached a heavy, metal door. The officer who had spoken to the survivor placed his ear against the door, listening intently. "I can hear something," he whispered. "It sounds like breathing." Detective Williams nodded, his expression grim. "All right, everyone. We're dealing with a potential survivor here. Let's be careful when we open this door." He gestured to one of the SWAT team members, who carefully unlocked the door and threw it open. The team stumbled back in surprise as a figure stumbled out of the darkness, coughing violently. It was another guest, covered in blood and barely conscious. They rushed forward to help him, quickly attending to his wounds and loading him onto a gurney. As they carried him upstairs, they couldn't help but wonder what else might be hidden in the secret chamber they had just discovered. As they continued to search the mansion, the team found evidence of a twisted cannibalistic cult operating within the walls. They uncovered a makeshift altar adorned with human bones and candles, a room filled with jars of preserved human flesh, and a hidden laboratory where the family had apparently been experimenting on their victims. The scope of their depravity was almost unimaginable. Finally, they located the missing guests, all of whom had managed to escape in various ways. Some had been aided by the other survivors, while others had found their own paths to freedom. As the last of the survivors were accounted for, Detective Williams breathed a sigh of relief. It had been a long and harrowing night, but they had done it. They had saved the lives of innocent people and brought the perpetrators to justice. As the sun rose over Tranquility Falls, the officers gathered outside the mansion, watching as the forensic teams began their meticulous work. They knew that the investigation would continue for weeks, if not months, but for now, they could rest easy knowing that the worst was over. They had done their jobs, and they had done them well. The town of Tranquility Falls had been shaken to its core. The revelation that the respected Maplecrest family had been secretly practicing cannibalism for generations sent shockwaves through the community. The surviving guests, once haunted by the memories of that fateful Halloween night, now found themselves at the center of a national media storm. The Maplecrest cannibals had become a household name, synonymous with evil and depravity. The trial of the Maplecrest family was a spectacle unlike any other. The courtroom was packed with reporters, spectators, and victims' rights advocates, all eager to catch a glimpse of the infamous cannibals. The family's lawyer, a seasoned defense attorney known for taking on the most high-profile cases, attempted to cast doubt on the testimony of the survivors. He questioned their sanity, their motives, and even their memories. Meanwhile, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence against the Maplecrests: gruesome photographs of their underground lair, DNA evidence linking them to the remains of their victims, and even recordings of their twisted rituals. The courtroom erupted into gasps and tears as the full extent of their depravity was laid bare. The verdict came down after a tense trial. The Maplecrest family was found guilty on all charges. The judge sentenced them to life in prison without the possibility of parole, stating that their crimes were so heinous that they could not be rehabilitated. As they were led away in handcuffs, the surviving guests and members of the community breathed a sigh of relief. But the aftermath was far from simple. The townspeople, once so welcoming and friendly, now turned on each other. They questioned who they truly were and what secrets they may be hiding. Paranoia and mistrust spread like wildfire, fracturing the close-knit community. The surviving guests, haunted by the memories of that fateful night, struggled to rebuild their lives. They formed a support group, meeting in secret to share their experiences and offer each other comfort. As the years passed, the shadow of the Maplecrest cannibals loomed larger than ever. The trial became a landmark case in American criminal history, but it did little to heal the wounds inflicted upon Tranquility Falls. The town would never be the same again. The survivors tried to move on, but they could never truly escape the past. They built new lives, raised families, and tried to forget the horrors they had witnessed. But deep down, they knew that the scars left by the Maplecrest family would last forever. The story of Tranquility Falls and the Maplecrest cannibals became a cautionary tale for generations to come, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly perfect lives. And as the years passed, the townspeople continued to tell and retell the story, each version becoming more sensationalized and more removed from the truth. But no matter how much time passed, the memory of that fateful Halloween night would always remain etched in the collective consciousness of Tranquility Falls, a haunting reminder of the evil that once walked among them. The town of Tranquility Falls had been forever changed by the events that unfolded at the Maplecrest mansion. The once welcoming and idyllic community now found itself grappling with the aftermath of the horrific revelations about their neighbors, the Maplecrest cannibals. The trial had captured the nation's attention, as the grisly details of their cannibalistic rituals and the depths of their depravity were revealed to the world. The survivors, still struggling to come to terms with what they had endured, banded together to form a support group, seeking solace and understanding in each other's company. The meetings were held in a small community center, its walls adorned with colorful posters and childish artwork that served as a stark contrast to the dark secrets that the group had shared. Chairs were arranged in a circle, each participant taking a seat, their faces etched with the memories of that fateful night. As they waited for the session to begin, they exchanged nervous glances and offered quiet words of encouragement. The facilitator, a kind-hearted therapist who had volunteered her services to the group, entered the room and took her seat at the head of the circle. She smiled warmly at the group, trying to put them at ease. "Hello, everyone," she said softly. "It's good to see you all here today." The silence that followed was heavy with emotion, but no one spoke. They knew that sharing their stories was the first step towards healing. One by one, the survivors began to speak, recounting their experiences in vivid detail. They talked about the terror they had felt as they were hunted through the mansion, the pain of their injuries, and the horror of witnessing their friends and neighbors being slaughtered. They spoke of the strength they had found in each other, and the bonds that had been forged in the face of unimaginable evil. The facilitator listened intently, occasionally offering a question or a word of comfort. As the hours passed, the air in the room began to lighten, as the weight of their shared burden was slowly lifted. There were moments of laughter, as they remembered small acts of kindness shown by the Maplecrests before they revealed their true nature, and tears were shed as they mourned the loved ones they had lost. When the meeting adjourned, the survivors filed out of the room, their steps a little lighter than before. They gathered in the hallway, exchanging phone numbers and promising to stay in touch. Some lingered, reluctant to leave the safety of the group, while others were eager to return to their normal lives. But all of them knew that they would always carry a piece of Tranquility Falls and the Maplecrest cannibals with them, a reminder of the fragility of human nature and the importance of staying vigilant against evil. As the years passed, the support group continued to meet, its membership ebbing and flowing with time. The survivors found solace in each other's company, and in the knowledge that they had not been through those horrors alone. They vowed never to forget what had happened to them, and to be vigilant against such evil in the future. And as new generations grew up in Tranquility Falls, they too were taught about the Maplecrest cannibals, their story serving as a warning of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most idyllic communities. The town slowly began to heal, but the trauma ran deep. The survivors held onto their memories like precious relics, refusing to let the horrors they had endured be forgotten. They knew that their experiences had made them stronger, more resilient, and more aware of the world around them. And as they watched their children grow up and start families of their own, they took comfort in the knowledge that they had done everything in their power to protect them from the darkness that had once threatened to consume them all. The town of Tranquility Falls, once a peaceful and idyllic community, is now reeling from the aftermath of the Maplecrest cannibals trial. The family, led by patriarch Daniel Maplecrest, has been found guilty of numerous counts of kidnapping, torture, and murder. The sentencing hearing is tense, with family members sobbing uncontrollably and vowing vengeance on the court system they believe has betrayed them. The survivors of the attack, however, find little comfort in the verdict. They are haunted by the memories of that fateful night and struggle to trust that justice has been served. As the days pass, rumors begin to circulate around town. Some residents believe that the Maplecrests were set up by a rival crime family, the Rossettis, who had long coveted their territory and resources. These whispers gain traction when it is revealed that one of the key witnesses against the Maplecrests, Lisa Rossetti, had been missing for several weeks prior to her testimony. She had been found disheveled and terrified in a nearby park, her story riddled with inconsistencies. The survivors of the attack are divided in their beliefs. Some remain steadfast in their conviction that the Maplecrests are guilty and deserve to rot in prison. Others, like Sarah Jenkins, find themselves questioning the evidence presented against them. Sarah was one of the survivors who had been held captive by the Maplecrests and had witnessed their depravity firsthand. Yet, she can't shake the feeling that something is off about the entire trial. She wonders if there might be more to the story, if the Rossettis might somehow be involved. As the weeks turn into months, the tension in Tranquility Falls only grows. The survivors' support group meets more frequently, offering each other comfort and solace in the face of their shared trauma. At the same time, they grapple with the implications of the trial's outcome and the possibility that the Maplecrests may have been set up. Sarah, unable to let go of her doubts, decides to conduct her own investigation. She begins to dig deeper into the lives of the Rossettis, uncovering a web of secrets and lies that stretch back decades. Sarah's investigation leads her to a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of town, where she discovers a trove of incriminating evidence linking the Rossettis to the disappearance of several other townspeople. She finds a series of video recordings in which Lisa Rossetti can be seen admitting to her role in the scheme. Horrified but determined, Sarah takes the recordings to the police. The police, already weary of the case, reluctantly agree to reopen the investigation. As they comb through the evidence, it becomes clear that Sarah was right all along. The Rossettis had framed the Maplecrests in order to take over their territory. The survivors, once so divided in their beliefs, are finally able to find some closure. The Rossettis are arrested and brought to trial, and Tranquility Falls begins the long process of healing. In the aftermath of the trial, Sarah and her friends continue to meet regularly, sharing their stories and offering each other support. They vow to remain vigilant against any future threats to their town, but also to cherish the sense of community that has grown stronger in the wake of the tragedy. As the years pass, the people of Tranquility Falls continue to live their lives, always mindful of the darkness that lurks just beneath the surface, and forever grateful for the strength they found in each other. Decades have passed since the infamous night of the Maplecrest cannibals. The town of Tranquility Falls has changed drastically since then. The once welcoming and friendly townspeople now harbor a sense of unease and paranoia. They can't help but wonder if their neighbors are hiding something sinister beneath the surface. The survivors of that fateful night, now elderly and frail, continue to live with the haunting memories of what they experienced. The trial of the Maplecrest family ended with a guilty verdict, and they were sentenced to life in prison. However, rumors persist that they were set up by a rival crime family seeking to take over their territory. This uncertainty has left the town divided, with some still believing in the family's innocence and others convinced of their guilt. The debate rages on, fueled by the release of a new documentary about the case. The documentary, titled The Tragedy at Maplecrest, has brought national attention back to Tranquility Falls. Reporters and filmmakers from around the country have descended upon the town, eager to uncover the truth about what happened that night. The filmmakers interviewed countless townspeople, including survivors and those who were present during the events. One such survivor, Sarah Johnson, is now an elderly woman living in the same house where she grew up. She was just a teenager when she attended the party at the Maplecrest mansion. She vividly remembers the sense of foreboding that filled the air as the night progressed. She recalls how their hosts, the Maplecrests, seemed overly friendly and attentive, almost to the point of being creepy. "I just had this feeling that something wasn't right," Sarah says, her voice trembling with emotion. "But no one would believe me. Everyone thought I was just a silly girl, overreacting to a harmless party." Sarah's husband, Robert, nods in agreement. He was also at the party and remembers how quickly the mood shifted when the guests began disappearing. "At first, we thought it was all just a big joke," he says. "But as the night went on, it became clear that something truly horrific was happening." The documentary also features interviews with members of the town's current generation, many of whom grew up hearing stories about the Maplecrest cannibals. Some believe that the family was set up, while others are convinced of their guilt. There are even those who doubt that the family was responsible for the crimes at all. "I've heard rumors that the family was working with the police the whole time," says one local teenager. That they let a few people go to make it look like they were cannibals, when really they were just trying to take down a rival gang. As the documentary unfolds, it becomes clear that the people of Tranquility Falls are still grappling with the legacy of the Maplecrest cannibals. The filmmakers expertly weave together the various perspectives and theories, painting a complex picture of a town torn apart by tragedy and uncertainty. The release of the documentary has once again thrust Tranquility Falls into the national spotlight. The townspeople are forced to confront the past and decide for themselves what really happened that fateful night. The debate rages on, with no clear answers in sight. Only one thing is certain: the shadow of the Maplecrest cannibals will continue to loom large over Tranquility Falls for generations to come. If you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment below with your thoughts. Have you experienced a spine-chilling horror that left you trembling? Share your terrifying tale with us by emailing nightmarenetwork@hotmail.com, and we'd be thrilled to feature it on our platform.